So Patrick, Adrien, tell me a bit about your film. Quick synopsis.
Well, you wanna go for it? Okay. So our short film, Not Supposed to Be Here, is about a guy named Frank who wakes up in the middle of the Korean War, where he has no idea where he's at, and he tries to navigate and retrace his steps as he basically finds himself in this entirely isolated forest alone, trying to save some of his friends.
What were some of the biggest inspirations behind making it?
I think a lot of the biggest inspirations behind this were actually, funny enough, that the Vietnam scene in Forrest Gump was a big one.
Sure.
Specifically, just the idea of a guy that feels he has so much pressure on his shoulders to save everyone that is around him, everyone that he knows.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a lot of psychological elements to it. So I think I don't really actually have that kind of stuff. I don't really have any specific.
Dude, what I'll say is the Forrest Gump is a good shout because that's definitely a reference. There's a lot of moments in which he's looking around and shots are coming from nowhere. You know what I mean? And he doesn't know what's shooting at him or how. And I think that was a very big point for us to make someone feel disoriented in the film, to get Frank to just feel like he's completely doesn't know what he's looking at and lost. So yeah.
Also Black Mirror. I think
sure.
Adrien and I pull a lot of our ideas from big twists and things that people normally wouldn't see coming, or taking maybe some usual aspects of some stuff that people have already seen and just trying to totally pull people out of it and make them realize that what they're seeing isn't actually what they're actually seeing. It's just tricking the audience, I think, is that. So Black Mirror is a huge inspo as well.
Mm-hmm. You were mentioning it a bit with the shots coming from everywhere. This is a very atmospheric film, and it feels like there's a big scale to it, but obviously you guys shot it on a very small budget. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a bit about how you went about creating this kind of grand concept on a small scale?
We got very lucky because we have a great producer, shout out Char. She has a really big backyard with a ton of forest, and that came in super clutch because we scouted that location and found the perfect spot, which worked for us. And you could see some of the houses in the background, but we made sure the camera to just kind of cheat a little bit, not to point it. Yeah. But it's just that environment specifically on that day with that lighting made it so easy to build this sense of worry and lost. The characters, I think also the camera work in the film really helped pay dividends to that, because Phil made sure to keep things tight and then hit you with some wide shots in random moments. You know what I mean? In the editing, we also made sure that we had this sort of dual perspective going, where you didn't know where he was with the tight shots, but then we'd hit really wide shots where then you didn't know where he was in those wide shots. You know what I mean? So you're constantly kind of lost until he sort of finds his bearings towards the end of the movie. But yeah,
I think we also used the location to kind of mold the story
100%.
and where Frank needed to go to get to where he ends up by the end of the film. I mean, with the location that we had, it was a lot of we had a story involved in mind and beats to it, but obviously you can't map that out when you can't control a set. We didn't build a jungle from scratch. We didn't build a forest. And the film was supposed to be, the short story is based in during the Vietnam War. And Adrien had done a bunch of location scouts in a bunch of various places, and nothing in Ontario looks like the Vietnam jungle.
Not at all.
A little bit, so at times, but we ended up pivoting entirely, and I rewrote the whole story to fit the Korean War and did all
Korea's landscape is
it's actually somehow looks very similar to some of the stuff we were able to use, so we adapted pretty well to that, I think.
And the great thing is I think with just the entire all the acting also did an amazing job of sort of playing into this feeling that we really wanted to grab with the movie, but like Pat said, it was a whole journey of sort of trying to do the location scout and realizing that we're not finding what we want to find, and using that sort of to advantage and twist the story. And what was cool is then when we found the location, we would go on the location. We had the set script, but we'd go with Pat on location and Shar and Phil, and we would just sort of look around, what can we use, how can we use it, how can the actor get from here to here to here, and if it didn't fit the script, Pat would be sure to sort of come up with new ideas, and we work together to sort of be like, okay, what if this happens at this moment, and sort of rebuild the story with the beats that we have based on the location, and that really helped us out, sort of make things go very smooth on the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool how you guys adapted on the fly to sort of change the story to better fit the location. I wanted to ask a bit about your guys' dynamic as a writer-director duo. How does that sort of work in pre-production and then on production itself?
Yeah, I mean, me and Adrien have been writing for quite a few years now, and ultimately we come up with a lot of ideas on our own, where sometimes it's a lot of times when we experience something on our day-to-day basis, where we come up with a seed of an idea, and then somewhat of a premise, and then we'll bring it to each other, and then we go from there in terms of like, is this a short? What locations can we do? How are we going to condense this? What's the premise? What are the characters? So I really think it's a very fluid dynamic where we both have original ideas that we come up with. We both have come up with ideas together at the same time, but we're able to understand kind of what we're looking for. We have a very similar style of like writing and storytelling at the same time. So I think having that sort of that honesty, those open conversations, I think it helps us a lot to come up with what we do.
For sure. We, since second year of university, which was 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Something like that, 4 years ago, have called every day.
Okay,
we call every day, and most days we talk on FaceTime for 6 hours, and we just talk about projects, things that need to get done, writing. Sometimes we write together. Sometimes Pat writes on his own. Sometimes I write on my own. But yeah, I think that really builds sort of a culture of creative freedom that we have together, and this flow that when we both are really passionate about a project and we see that we can bring something different, each of us, to a writing project, it's pretty insane, dude, because working with someone else, like, you might be tunnel vision with an idea and they might be like, that is shit.
Yeah.
So do not, that's a terrible idea. And you sort of talk through the process, and sometimes it turns out to be a great idea and sometimes it turns out to be really bad. The one thing though is you get through the shit a lot faster with someone else rather than just in your own head. And I love writing with someone else, especially Pat, and we just, understand each other so well that it works,
Yeah. I feel like also having a writing partner really helps hold you accountable to get
100%.
stuff done.
Yeah.
100%. I wake up at sometimes I wake up late and I'll hop on FaceTime and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? Wake up, you know what I mean? And then the next days and we make sure to be as consistent as we can with the writing that we do, and getting up and working as much as we can till the late hours of the night, because this is what we want to do, you know what I mean?
That's amazing. That's inspiring.
Oh, thank you, bro.
That's
I
awesome.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Speaking of writing, there's obviously, I won't spoil it, but a good twist in this film. How do you guys go about crafting? What do you think the key is to crafting a good twist in a film is?
Oh, that's a great question.
I think crafting a good twist is not only doing something that's not expected, but also throughout the movie make sure that it's not expected, because I think a lot of people will be like, okay, this is a twist of the movie, and then build everything around the twist, and so you always know what twist is coming. You know what I mean? Which I think is it's like, then why watch the whole movie? Just watch the twist and you're like, okay, cool, I understand, you know what I mean? But I think to craft a very good twist, it needs to be something simple, something that makes sense to the content that you're trying to evoke, talk about, show in the film, and make sure that it's done well within the writing, and it works. Don't just do a twist for the sake of a twist. You know what I mean? If it works, it works.
I think it really just depends also on the project. You could
100%.
come up with a twist and then work backwards from that, or sometimes you'll just have such a great start with compelling characters, a lot of great subtext, and then it's really kind of defying expectations. A lot of times when we write something and then we come up with a twist, the first twist that we come up with we don't normally use, because it's that's what everyone else is thinking. Of course this is going to happen. Of course it's the first thing that we land on.
Go for 12.
Yeah, and a lot of it is trial and error, and some obviously stories don't need that. But I think a lot of it is asking a question of you're not just writing whatever story that you're writing for chronologically, you're also writing it with the audience's perspective in mind.
Yeah.
Because when you're writing and you have all these ideas and you know the ending and you know the twists, it's really, again, with the tunnel vision, it's hard to understand where, what the audience is feeling, but at the same time, you kind of have to write two stories. you write what the audience is seeing for the first time, and you're writing what's actually happening in the story. So whether you're doing time jumps, whether you're running like a flashback, or just something big happens, all like you have to really consider everything. And like Adrien said, like it has to be logical as well. Like, it has to make sense, and it has to trick the audience and not have them like think of it right away. Because if you thought of it right away, you know, you're not. Unfortunately, we're not all geniuses on the first try. So, yeah.
I don't think you guys will see this plot twist coming. I didn't. Last thing, if there's one thing you want people to take away after watching your film, what do you think? What would you want them to take away from it?
I just want them to take away sort of a story that was surprising to them, something that they haven't normally seen. I remember when we were writing this and we were making this film, the big thing that I wanted is I wanted people to talk about it after the screening. I wanted people to go around and sort of debate what the story was about, what it really meant, kind of be left with a lot of questions, a lot like a Kubrick film, you know what I mean? So I hope that that's what happens. I hope people talk about it. I hope people have questions. I hope people sort of investigate the film itself, because that's what it was made for.
I feel like, I agree with that too. I think the second that people start questioning, wait, like, did you get this from the start? Did you catch things? We love to make films that we like to think they have rewatchable value, where like you watch the first time and you see it, and then when you go back, you get a totally different viewing, because
that's how we did it. That's
we scatter.
I completely forgot about that, but that's what we did it for. When you watch it, you have so many little
and we do that on purpose. Like, we do that going into it, and then in the way that this film was written was totally different than when we went to the edit. It was so chronological in terms of what you're seeing on screen, and then when we went to the edit, these guys put together something genius where they chopped it up. They just threw it all together, and it kind of came out in a more fluid way. But I think also another thing is, when Adrien read the short story that I wrote, and he saw that it was like about basically it was about the Vietnam War, it was about the Korean War, it was about war in general, and like considering that as like a short film, and also a feasible thing to shoot without like massive budget, is something that isn't out of the capacity of any filmmaker. Like, if we really shot this thing for like barely any money, and yes, there's a lot of, you know, important things like having connections, knowing the right people, but no idea should be just like dead in the water because you think it's too big of a scale, whether you're using like soldiers or props or replicas or anything like that. Like, it's possible to do that. Obviously, you know, the more detail you put in it, the more better it looks, the more believable it is, but it's not like it's impossible. Like, it is. Like, we tried to do it, and I feel like seeing some of the soldiers wearing authentic uniforms, holding authentic weapons, is like, it's crazy. And when you see it happen, you realize the costs of that kind of stuff, and the passion that a lot of people throw into that stuff. It's like, it's feasible, and it's possible to be done.
I want to say one more thing. We haven't talked about this before, but the events of that story, Pat did a tremendous amount of research on, because we really wanted the story to come from a place of truth. And so Pat did a tremendous amount of research where he had a multitude of real stories from the Korean War that have actually happened. And we had a whole document with a ton of stories where we had tons of videos of vets and sort of what war can do to them, and sort of learning it from there. We had tons of articles and stories about real events that happened in the Korean War. So what happens in the movie is based off of an actual event that happened in the Korean War. We do, obviously, the movie itself isn't a real story, but we tried to make it sort of like fit an actual story that if you want to know about, come talk to us at the end of the film festival. But
it's historical fiction is what it is. Like, it's like what Tarantino does with, like, for example, which is another inspiration, which is Inglourious Bastards, where he's taken a real thing and same with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where you're taking a real event and you're just taking your spin on it, and you're placing it in those events. So it's like everything around it, all the facts that the guys sang throughout the film, all the name drops of, you know, what battalion he's a part of, which camp he trained at in Canada, all the Canadian historical facts of what these guys were going through and what they're a part of is all real. Like, all of that. And no one's gonna, and like, I
forgot about that.
And no one's gonna Google it. No one's probably gonna like search it up or like be like, is this a real thing? But it's just an extra element that someone out there may be interested in being like, holy shit, like, they did their homework, they looked into this. And so we try to make it as realistic as possible, because I think when you're dealing with something like history, when you're talking about a topic like war and PTSD, it's like you need to be incredibly careful because you don't want to be distasteful and you don't want to, not that we're looking to offend anybody because art is subjective, but like it shows the effort, the extra effort that we could have just not done and made up our own shit.
Yeah.
And maybe people get more of an impact out of it, maybe they don't, but
for sure,
that's just what we want to do.
Even then, like, even for people who aren't history buffs, I just feel like a detail-oriented story is so much more immersive. And like, if you're just making up facts that didn't happen, I feel like the cracks would show eventually in a film. So I think doing 100%. That is definitely the right way to do it.
100%. We had a lot of fun doing it.
And especially in Canada, and we're going on a tangent now, but like, especially in Canada, like a lot of people don't really know the history, specifically of the Korean War or what Canada had to deal with. And the story that we have pulled out from this
unbelievable
is like
story.
Is actually something that could be made into a feature film. And like the Battle of Kapyong, I'll name drop it now, is like an insane feat of like Canadian military and heroism and bravery. And like we had to Google that. We had to find that out. It's not taught or anything like that. And that kind of stuff is like what people should be doing, and more Canadian filmmakers should be doing if you want to tackle stories like that, is like show more of the history, show more of like what this country offers and what the people that served it did. I mean, it just adds that much of a cooler element when you want to kind of make it cool at that point, which is where we took it with like a science fiction psychological thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing film. What you guys are talking about having rewatchability, I feel like I enjoyed it more on a rewatch. So if you guys want to see the film, it's at CrowdPicks Film Fest Oakville this year. Thank you guys so much for sitting down with me.
Check it out.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.